Many of you know the doped-up champion Bjarne Riis from his brilliant 1996 Tour de France, in which he won with notorious authority and floored the five-time champion Miguel Indurain with an exhibition in Hautacam. However, every story has its beginnings, and the Eagle of Herning did not go from being a simple gregario of Laurent Fignon to Tour champion in 2 days. Do you want to know how he managed the transformation from friendly alopecia to Mr. 60, the terror of summer cycling? I'll take that as a yes. Without further ado, let the show begin. In the late 80s and early 90s, Bjarne Riis was just another cyclist. A teammate of Laurent Fignon at System U and Castorama, he had two standout performances in his career. A transition stage win in the 1989 Giro d'Italia, in which his leader Fignon took the overall victory, and a sixth place in the 1991 World Championships. He was the typical rider who was hardly focused on by the cameras, and if they did it, it was from afar, finishing 107th in the 1991 Tour and 101st in the 1992 Giro d'Italia. A guy who, if he had a job as a cyclist, it was because he was a friend of the French Tour champion. His director at Ariastea, Giancarlo Ferretti, didn't know what to do with him. He didn't get into breakaways, and Riis himself said that he could only work for others, that he wasn't good for winning. Until he met Dr. Luigi Cecchini in the winter of 1993. The Danish champion's transformation was instantaneous. Our favourite bald man, until a few months ago unnoticeable in the peloton, became a real killer. As is often the case in such situations, his contract was coming to an end, and he decided to raise his level to such an extent that even he couldn't believe it. The images you are seeing are from the 7th stage of the Giro d'Italia, in which he was part of a breakaway with two of the most dangerous Italians of that time in these types of stages, Roberto Perini and the legendary Michele Coppolillo. Faced with such fast men, we could expect little from Riis, a sprinter without much known speed, until he suddenly surprised everyone, and with a perfect tactic, placing himself behind both of those Transalpine wonders, he managed to win the sprint and achieve his first victory in 4 years, again at the Giro d'Italia. But the success was short-lived for Riis, who had to abandon the competition due to gastritis. It was then that, being a nobody, he told his director, Ferretti, "Be calm and take me to the Tour. I know that I can win it." Those words seemed comical, to say the least. How could that slow and clumsy donkey win the most important competition in the world of cycling? However, Riis's burning eyes said that he could do it all, and the Italian director decided to include him in his 9 for the Tour de France. Coincidentally, he proved that he could be a totally different rider. In the 7th stage, a 200-kilometre mid-mountain day, Riis was in a dangerous breakaway with teammate Bruno Chengialta, the Colombian Alvaro Mejia, the Venezuelan Leonardo Sierra, the Italian-British Max Sciandri, and the Belgian Johan Museo. All of them great cyclists, and some of them the best in the world in their respective disciplines. Well, the Dane not only pulled turns that day on the flat to consolidate the breakaway and finished the day 3rd in the overall classification of the Tour, he also went over the mountain passes first, and to literally go with the Great Dane out, he also won the stage, and not in any way, as he had done 50 days earlier in Italy. He was now on the wheel of Sciandri and Museo, two of the guys with the most top-end speed in the bunch, and beat them by almost a bike length in a breathtaking sprint. As if he were the best packer, Riis won the stage and was also the new leader of the mountains classification. In the post-stage interviews, with a straight face and a hard neck, he said that his big change was due to nutrition. While Matt Sciandri, the current Movistar director, could not believe what he had just seen with Bjarne Riis. 2 days later, the first long individual time trial of the Tour took place at Lac de Madine. Rijs finished 4 minutes and 40 seconds behind the winner Miguel Indurain. But in big MIG times, Rijs losing less than 2 minutes to a specialist like Tony Rominger was a great success, especially since he finished 12th ahead of riders like Charlie Motte, Claudio Chiappucci and a young American called Lance Armstrong. But Rijs's big surprise would come the day after, on the first big mountain day in the Alps. In a stage almost 250 kilometers with the Glandon, the Galibier and the Telegraph. As a very hard mountain passes on the route, Bjarne Riis made his first great performance as a climber. In a stage of almost 250 kilometers, including the Glandon, the Galibier and the Telegraph, as the hard mountain passes on the route, Bjarne Riis made his first great performance as a climber. Despite being far from used to fighting for the leading positions, Riis, supported by his former team leader Laurent Fignon, who in turn pulled the disappointing Gianni Bugno, arrived 7 minutes behind the winner Tony Rominger. No doubt big differences, but for a man like him, used to losing more than half an hour in these types of stages, finishing in the top 20 was a success. Nevertheless, he kept his place in the top 10, and the Danish fans began to flock to the tour to cheer him on, en masse. A tremendous halo of admiration was brewing for a bald man who, days before, was a complete unknown in Denmark. So, the next day became the key day for Bjarne Riis, when he himself believed that in the future he could win the Tour de France. 4 very hard passes, such as the Izard, the Var, La Bonnette and Isola 2000, all but the latter above 2000 metres. And all this the day after a very hard stage the previous day. Well, Riis didn't just hang in there with the best on this very hot July day. He also dared to attack on the descents, and especially in his well-remembered attack on the first ramps of Isola 2000. That bald man, who for many was a simple gregario, similar in size to Miguel Indurain, who was amongst the first classified by a breakaway, wanted to win one of the most prestigious stages of that tour. And not only that, he managed that behind, Tony Rominger and Miguel Indurain had to give 100% to catch him on that hard mountain pass in the Alps. Riis felt like he was on a cloud. He couldn't win the stage, but he was only 30 seconds behind. And on that day, he became a superstar in Denmark. And of course, he saw that he could be with the best if he continued to treat himself as he did. In the Pyrenees, he again hung with the best in the 3 mountain stages, finishing 3rd and 4th in 2 of them, and shadowing pretty closely Miguel Indurain and Tony Rominger when they attacked. Undoubtedly, he was already amongst the best in the mountains, and this in the most prestigious race in the world. In the last time trial, he did lose 5 minutes to Rominger again, but it didn't matter. He had finished 5th in the Tour de France, 16 minutes behind the winner Indurain, yes, but ahead of Claudio Chiappucci, Andrew Hampson and Pedro Delgado, amongst other renowned climbers. At the age of 29 he had become a player, and he was received as such in Denmark, and from then on he knew that that was the life that he wanted, the one for which he had worked so hard. How did he do it? Well, as he himself confessed in 2007, the key to such a performance was massive doping with Dr. Luigi Cecchini, in which he combined a gentle low-calorie diet with well-timed rich vials of EPO that he managed like no other cyclist. His Spartan discipline with blood transfusions, knowing how and when to prick and train, had turned him into a racehorse. A horse that one day, 3 years later, could win the Tour de France.